Baker Dill, a fishing boat captain who lives on a secluded island called Plymouth, is on a boat with tourists and obsessively focused on catching a massive tuna he calls Justice. When Justice takes the bait, instead of handing the fishing rod to the tourists who had paid for the trip, Dill decides to reel it in himself, disregarding Duke, his sailor's, suggestion. The tourists, upset by this, try to remind him that they paid for the experience, but Dill responds aggressively, brandishing a knife to stop them from taking the rod. This confrontation leads the tourists to refuse to pay for the trip. After a long period of patience and struggle, the fish manages to escape anyway. Meanwhile, a man named Reed, desperate to reach Dill, goes so far as to wade through the water while still wearing a suit. Despite his efforts, he fails to get Dill's attention. When the trip ends, the tourists leave without settling the payment. Duke, worried about not getting his share, expresses concern, but Dill assures him he'll come up with the money. Later, Dill visits his friend Constance, who asks about his financial situation. She ends up lending him the money he needs. During their conversation, Dill inquires about her son, as he's thinking about replacing Duke as his sailor. Afterward, Dill briefly mentions the fish at Jack's bar and leaves. He later visits Duke to pay him and asks him to join him the next morning, this time without clients. Duke warns against wasting gas, but Dill insists, convinced they're close after seeing Justice. That evening, Dill, while drinking, apologizes to the memory of his son for not catching the fish. At the same time, Patrick looks at old photos of his father, reflecting on the past. The next day, Dill heads to the docks, unaware that Reed is watching him. Dill and Duke go out, but Justice never appears. Frustrated, Dill blames Duke, firing him. Constance watches quietly from her window. Later, Dill returns to Jack's bar, who suggests he needs help, but Dill brushes it off. Their conversation is interrupted by Karen, Dill's ex-wife, who has returned after many years. Karen, calling him John, asks for a private talk. They go to his boat, with Constance again watching. On board, Karen reveals her new husband is abusive and controlling. She explains Patrick hides in his room during arguments, escaping into video games. Karen asks Dill for help, proposing they take her husband out on a boat, get him drunk, and throw him to the sharks for $10 million. Dill is shocked and orders Karen off the boat, sailing away, unaware that Reed is watching again. The next morning, Dill returns with a large catch, and Constance, curious about Karen, questions him, but he avoids answering and goes for a swim. While in the water, Dill hears voices, Karen's husband shouting, and Patrick calling out to him. He envisions Patrick swimming beside him, but then abruptly wakes up at his table, touching a wet surface. Meanwhile, Patrick also wakes up in his room, noticing water spilled on his desk after playing video games. Later that day, Karen's husband Frank arrives on the island. In their hotel room, Frank orders Karen to remove her robe so he can inspect her. Discovering a scratch on her leg, he grows suspicious and takes off his belt to punish her. Meanwhile, Dill stops by Lois's fishing store to settle his debt and buy new hooks. Lois mentions that everyone on the island knows about Karen's situation and how Frank has been abusing her. She also informs Dill that a man named Reed is searching for him, but Dill pays no attention and leaves. When Dill reaches his boat, Frank and Karen are already there. Frank complains about Dill refusing to take him on a fishing trip, but Dill once again declines, using the excuse that it's illegal to take tourists without a sailor. Frank, convinced that everyone has a price, says he'll return the next day at 7 a.m., showing Dill the gun he carries as a warning before leaving. Unbothered by Frank's threats, Dill sets off on his own, once again searching for justice. Reed arrives at the docks just after Dill has left, and upon checking his watch, he notices a strange discrepancy, a 20-second shift in his schedule. Dill doesn't find justice that day, but he returns with enough fish to sell at the market. That night, he spends time with Constance, who pushes him to choose between helping Karen and chasing the fish that haunts his mind. The next morning at the market, Duke approaches Dill, having heard the rumors that Frank is offering 10 grand for the fishing trip. Duke points out that they could really use the money. He needs to support his grandson. The boat requires repairs, and he knows thanks to Constance, that Dill only fired him out of pity, which frustrates him. This opportunity is too big to pass up, and after some thought, Dill agrees to take Frank out on the trip, with the understanding that Duke will be there to keep an eye on him and prevent any rash decisions. Later, at the docks, Frank and Karen are once again waiting. Before setting sail, Dill pulls Karen aside to make it clear that he's only taking Frank fishing, nothing more. Trying to sway him, Karen describes how Frank has been hurting Patrick and reveals that she knows Dill talks to their son. She claims Patrick can hear Dill through his computer screen because they are somehow connected. Despite this, Dill sticks to his decision and heads out on the fishing trip with Duke and Frank. On the boat, Frank makes small talk and begins mocking his stepson, Patrick, calling him creepy and criticizing his love for video games over sports. He even admits he once suspected Patrick of doing something illegal online, only to discover the boy was just playing a fishing game. Frank recalls Patrick once threatening to kill him if he didn't catch a fish, and Dill, to Frank's surprise, finishes the sentence with him. Their conversation shifts to the lack of police on the island, but is cut short when a shark takes their bait. Frank slips trying to reel it in, and despite the temptation, Dill helps him catch the shark with Duke's assistance. Karen is disappointed when Dill returns with Frank alive. As Frank goes to clean up, she approaches Dill, pays him, and tries once more to persuade him to follow through, reminding him Frank will want to fish again tomorrow. Duke overhears Karen telling Dill this was Patrick's idea, as their son wants justice. Before they can discuss further, Frank reappears, and Karen leaves with him. As a storm looms, Reed watches from the docks, while Duke, frustrated, demands an explanation. Dill takes him to a bar and reveals that he used to be a soldier named John, but after the war, his mind was so damaged that he never fully returned. Karen left him for Frank. Upon hearing about the $10 million offer, Duke urges Dill to focus on catching the fish, not killing a man. After Duke leaves, Dill heads to his boat in the rain. Hearing Patrick's voice calling out, Constance watches from her window as Karen suddenly appears. She shows Dill she still wears the ring he gave her, saying she never stopped thinking about him. Karen kisses Dill, and he finally agrees to kill Frank the next morning, but only if she brings Patrick to him. Karen agrees, saying she's still the same girl he once loved. Dill and Karen become intimate right there on the boat, and during the encounter, Dill notices the scars on Karen's back, left by Frank. Karen points out that they're both damaged in different ways. Once they're done, Dill feels a sense of victory, declaring that he's defeated Frank. He then orders Karen to leave.